You haven't followed me back.
All right, I'll fix that today.
All right, thank you.
I haven't blocked you, though, right?
No.
Okay, all right. Well, let's see how the interview goes first.
Okay. They always go good, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I'm kidding.
Listen, there's so much talk about, and first of all, I got to thank you for trying to help with Lake O. I can't believe we're reliving 2016 again, and this time looks even worse. The graphics that you held up on the floor the other day, do you think that your fellow senators get it?
Yeah, they do. So before I got here, so this is tied to the Everglades, okay? In the old days, what happened is Lake Okeechobee was sort of the headwaters. When it had too much water, the water went over the side of Lake Okeechobee, down into the Everglades, and into Florida Bay. That was the Everglades. That's where the water came from. It came from the north, flowed to the south, and so forth. Then people moved in, and that's just the way it was. Agriculture, an important industry in our state, so they built the dam to protect life and protect people. So when they built the dam, they figured out, well, where do we got to put this water? And they created this canal system and this levee system to go to the east and the west. What's happened over the years is people have moved into the northern part. And so now you got people and industry and, all kinds of things, putting fertilizer in the ground and so forth. Those nutrients get into the water. That water flows into Lake Okeechobee. And when it gets hot, those nutrients and that heat create algae. So when you're releasing water from Lake Okeechobee now, you're not just releasing water, you're releasing algae that comes with it. And it's happening, 16, happened again this year, not so much last year, luckily, but it'll keep happening. So what we have to do is, how can we get more of that water cleaned and south so that you're not releasing algae east, you're not releasing algae west. So this is a multi-pronged approach. Number one, we got to strengthen the Hoover Dam. We got a dike. We got to make it stronger. And that's a project that's supposed to take forever. We were able to go in and get all the money for it in the disaster relief. So it's going to be done by 2022, rapidly accelerating it. Good thing. That alone is not enough.
Yeah.
Two is we need to be able to send water south, which is what Everglades restoration is about. And one of the big projects there is this reservoir. That alone ain't going to solve it, but it's going to help. And it's a place where that water, some of that water, instead of going east and west, will go into this reservoir. The plants and the science of it is that the phosphates and all that will be sucked out of the water, and then that cleaner water could be released into the Everglades as opposed to going into these communities. That takes time to build. So last week, the White House has to approve it. And they did. We were on the phone with OMB and Mulvaney. They signed it. Now it's here in the Congress, and we got to pass the water bill here in the next couple of weeks that will authorize it, and the work will start to get it done. But these projects take, they just take time. You got to build. You can't just overnight. It's not like setting up a mobile home. I mean, it takes time to put these things in place. But every day and every week and every year that goes by without doing it is one more year that we're going to be facing this down in the future. So if people know that relief is on the way, it would help, even though we're going to face this for some time, to be honest with you. I mean, there's limited things we can do about it in the short term, but in the long term, there are solutions, but we got to get working on it. So you asked me the first question, do my colleagues get it? There's a guy named Jim Inhofe, senator from Oklahoma, great guy, good friend. He has long opposed Everglades restoration. He thought it was a waste of money, time, etc. From 2011 to 2015, I really worked him on it over and over and over and over again, even in the middle of my presidential campaign. And then Jim came out, changed his mind, and said, okay, we're going to do Everglades restoration. And that's how we got the Central Everglades planning process put in place in the water bill in 16 and 17. And that's what's open now, the floodgates, no pun intended, to get some of this stuff rolling. So we're on a good pace now to get this done. I wish it had happened 10 years ago, but it's one of my top priorities. And when I'm done here in the Senate one day, I want to be able to look back and say I did more for Everglades restoration, and as a result, the Lake Okeechobee issues than anybody ever did in Florida's history. It's one of my priorities, and I hope I have competition for that, because that means other people are working on it. Mast spends a lot of time on this too. He's great, and so we're on it, man. I mean, this is terrible, really terrible stuff.
Yeah, it is, because it's not only affecting our wildlife, but it's affecting people and their businesses as well. We're talking to Senator Marco Rubio. But let me ask you this, and if I sound naive, forgive me. You were able to delay the releases, for a couple weeks. Wouldn't it make sense to delay it even more while we try to get something done?
Yeah, so what happened there was, it was Sunday, the releases were going to start Monday. So imagine you're in these communities, you're already, you feel helpless, and I feel sometimes just, terrible, because I can see the stress. There's this poison, this invading gob of algae waiting to come at you. You know it's going to happen in a few hours. So it was like a Sunday afternoon. I just picked up the phone, called over to the White House, talked to the chief of staff and the folks over there, and said, guys, can you delay this by a few days more? Give us some time here to kind of figure this out and give people some good news down there. And they did. Talked to the Army Corps. They're in a tough spot. I don't always agree with every decision they make. The Army Corps' only interest is their job is to manage water. And there is a certain level in which they look at it and say, we got to release water because it's the rainy season. You know, the water comes in much faster than it goes out, and so we can never have the Herbert Hoover Dike breached, and because it's going to create flooding and people are going to die. So we can't let that happen. So they have a scientifically, mathematically created system where when the water reaches a certain point, no matter what's in it, they have to release it. They never thought about the algae. They think about the algae now more, and that's why you're seeing them doing things like pulse releases, which we also put in the law to require them to take that into account. They are now, because of all the pushback they've gotten, they are, for the first time ever, trying to figure out ways outside of what they call the manual to delay or slow the releases of water. But to be fair, they're also in a crunch because they're engineers, and at the end of the day, you know, they're trying. They also can't have the breach happen and the flooding happen because then there'll be loss of life and they'll be held responsible for that. So it's kind of a balancing act and a catch-22. And luckily, the rain this week has allowed them to delay. You know, the lack of rain has allowed them to delay releases more than we thought. But you know, they have to also anticipate sort of what might happen. You know, you could have a huge rainstorm in 3 days and suddenly their projections are off. So it's you know, I would love to just beat up on them, and they've made some decisions I strongly disagree with, but they also have, I want to be fair too, because the answer isn't just that.
Yeah, but it's just an awful situation that hopefully gets taken care of sooner rather than later. I've seen it as well, like you have, and it looks a lot worse this year because I think you said this on the Senate floor, that it goes down, it's not just the top, but it goes down several inches below the water.
Yeah, no, it's a thick, so last year, you know, we were there in 16 when it happened. Last year we didn't have it, but we were at the scene, and then we flew over it as well with the Army Corps and looked at the South Water Management District at all the different plans and how that would play out. And this year looks like it's going to be potentially worse than 16, and the only difference is I think the ability to get some of these releases pulsed and delayed has kept it from becoming even worse. But I don't want to fool anybody, man. This is a terrible thing, and we still have 2 months ahead of this, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. We're talking to Senator Marco Rubio. Tell me about the Deter Act.
So it's a pretty simple concept, and that is, you know, 2016, the Russians interfere, okay? I don't think that. I know it for a fact. I'm on the Intelligence Committee. We spend a lot of time on this stuff. It's just indisputable. And by the way, I want to be telling people the truth, okay? Putin's number one objective here was not electing Donald Trump. It was not. His number one objective was screwing with the United States because he thinks it will weaken us. But ultimately, whoever the next president was, he wanted that person to be dealing with controversy because it weakened them. And, you know, was going to do it to Hillary, but I could argue Donald Trump has spent a year and a half of his presidency with this Russia thing over his head, and so he achieved that objective, no matter who won. That was his number one objective. So Mueller's looking at whether Americans helped them, and the Intelligence Committee's looking at what our government did to try to stop it and what we need to do about it in the future, okay? That's what's dealing with 16. But we can't change what happened in the past. We can react to it, we can punish it, and we can reveal it. But we can't have influence over the future, and that's what the Deter Act is about. It's about putting in place a definition of what interference is, and then telling the Director of National Intelligence within 30 days after the next election, you will have to issue a report about whether or not Russia interfered. Did they hack into election sites? Did they, what did they do to mess around with us?
Place advertising.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's right. Spending money on American elections through shell companies and the like. The one that gets harder is Twitter. You know, with 5 Russian guys on Twitter is not interference. If it's a widespread campaign and you can prove it, that's something else. But did they interfere? And if they did, we put into law specific, detailed sanctions that go in place the minute that finding happens. So what happens is Putin is sitting there now deciding, am I going to mess around in 2018? And he knows what the price is. We have told him what the price is ahead of time, so he can make his decision based on whether or not he wants to pay the price. And the price has to be higher. The price price of doing it has to be higher than the benefit of doing it, and that's the purpose of the Deter Act. And we got to get something like that done, because no matter how you feel about 16 and Mueller and all that stuff, we can all agree that Russia and its government should have no role to play in our election systems.
Yeah, and some people don't understand that when they do actually play with us, they're doing it maliciously. And it does affect more than just one race. It's not just the presidential race. It could affect others, like, for example, of course, the midterms, which we're worried about. I wanted to ask you, at this point, Senator, here today, do you think we're prepared if the election was held today?
Well, it depends by who you mean we, because the U.S. election system is diffuse. We don't have a national election system, so it's run state by state, county by county. And I would say to you that my biggest fear is not that they're going to change tally of votes. Okay, that's not going to happen. All right, people that are listening to this broadcast, when you go vote in August and in November, your vote is going to count. Okay, Russians aren't going to change that part. That's not what I'm worried about. What I worry about is, let's say, I'll give you a scenario. Let's say there's a county, let's use Palm Beach County as an example, and let's say that on Election Day, 500 Republicans, and only Republicans, when they show up to vote, they're told, we don't have you in our system, you're not registered to vote. Now, they'll get a provisional ballot, and we'll work it out, but all of a sudden, you're going to have news stories saying 500 Republicans were denied the right to vote by Palm Beach County, whose election supervisor is a Democrat. So, if God forbid, as a Republican, saying we lose that election in that area, then the argument's going to be Democrats denied Republicans the right to vote, and as a result, we lost an election, and even though it was Russians who actually did it, and then there's going to be all kinds of controversy, chaos around our election system, creating all kinds of doubt about whether the election was even valid or legitimate. And now, imagine that fact pattern I just laid out, and overlay it on the year 2000. George Bush wins the presidency by less than 600 votes. Palm Beach County is the center of the world. Imagine if in 2000, 700 Democrats had been denied a vote because someone erased their names off the voter database. Imagine what that would have been like. It was already tough as it is. The arguments would have been Jeb Bush was governor, his brother, to help his brother, he got Democrats kicked off the rolls. That's the kind of stuff that I worry about, because that doesn't undermine one party or the other. It undermines our republic, our democracy. It makes it look like, people are stealing votes, and just think about how catastrophic that would be for the country, especially in the hyper-toxic partisan environment we're in today.
We're talking to Senator Marco Rubio. I appreciate you being here. Have you heard the Democrats' new slogan that they just came out with yesterday?
No, what is it?
Sit down for this one. It's called For the People. Now, what they don't realize is that's a slogan right, and you know the guy that owns it, right?
Yeah, that's that lawyer there in Florida.
John Morgan, that's his slogan, yeah. So the Democrats are about to get sued, and they don't even realize it after one day of bringing up this new slogan for the midterms.
Well, maybe he'll donate it to the Democrats.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up. How do you make up a slogan and not do a search first to see if somebody else is using it?
Yeah, I don't know who's in charge of that for them.
You want to talk about anti-Trump bias?
It's real, and I think it actually is hurting all of this, because, the one thing I'd say about it, look, I don't agree with everything the president does, just like my wife doesn't agree with everything I do, and we don't have to agree with everything. But I think we have to be fair, okay? The president's done some very good things. Obviously, I worked with him closely on Venezuela and Cuba, but the tax cut's been good for the American economy. There are things I would have done different in it, but it's been generally good. I'm glad he's standing up for America when it comes to China. He's right that our trade relationships around the world need to be balanced. I think we should have taken China on before taking on our allies in Europe and the like, but he deserves credit for those sorts of things. He's right that we have an immigration problem that needs to be addressed. We have laws that need to be enforced. I may have rolled it out a little differently, but he's right. He's done a lot of things that are positive. And what happens here is his opponents refuse to give him credit. I was talking about this yesterday. No president has been better for Israel than this president has been. No president's been stronger. I mean, everybody runs for president and they say they're going to move the embassy. Donald Trump moved the embassy, okay? And there are people whose entire careers are supporting Israel that still will not give him credit for it because they hate him. So that bias is real. It exists, and it warps the debate. Now, I would say there are people on the other side that do the same thing. They don't acknowledge that anything he does, or even don't even want you to disagree with him on everything. But the one thing that's most interesting is there are people in the media who don't realize how much they help the president, because they turn into who he accuses them of being when he attacks them. He accuses them of being biased and partial. And when they go after him because they're angry at him or because they don't like him, they actually prove him right in many cases.
Yeah.
So I just think everybody should take a deep breath. Life should be very simple, okay? When I agree with you, I'm with you. When I don't agree with you, I'll say I don't agree with you, and it's not personal. And by the way, I've never said anything publicly that I haven't even told the president personally or been willing to tell him. And he's generally fine with it. He likes hearing, people say, or different points of view, and so... Now, obviously, I know him. I campaigned against him for a year and a half. We got to know each other, and not everybody has a chance to do that. But I never go out, and say anything that I wouldn't tell him or haven't told him in advance.
But there's this big double standard, which I'm sure you're aware of, obviously. Obama in another country bad-mouthing this president, that apparently is okay. But when it goes the other way, they get the pass, wherever this pass comes from.
Yeah, I guess you're talking about the speech in overseas this week. I didn't see it. I'd read one excerpt about it somewhere, and, look, it is what it is. I'm not saying this stuff's not relevant. We need to understand, though, that we have a media culture, right, every day. Like, what is cable news about? Cable news is about opening up the morning by trying to outrage you over something, and then they bring on these talking heads to fight over it on television, okay? That's what cable news is. I get it. My job is not to watch cable news in the morning and then react to everything they think is going on in the world. My job is to pass laws and pursue public policy in the interest of the state of Florida and the United States of America. That's my job. My job is not to be a commentator on an ongoing basis about whatever some producer in New York has decided is the outrage of the day. So when something happens on Russia, that's a big deal. I'm going to talk about it. But by and large, when I hang up here, I got work to do. I got to get this Deter bill passed. I'm working on the Lake Okeechobee issues. We have an issue later today. We're going to be talking about deep fakes, which is the ability to develop a video that looks real but isn't, of me saying something like the New England Patriots are great. I would never say that. But somebody can produce a video of me saying that. Or, go Alabama, beat Florida. I would never say that. But imagine if some outrageous video like that were put out there. Imagine if the Russians, or the Chinese for that matter, did it on the eve of an election to a candidate saying something outrageous that could influence the race. So we're focused on that. We got a lot of things we're working on, and that's my job. My job is to change the law, protect the law, pass the law, confirm good judges. We got a Supreme Court thing coming up. Now, if a major issue emerges, or, the president or anybody steps out of line somewhere, we'll opine on behalf of the people of Florida. But I'm not a news commentator.
Yeah, and it may be a good thing that you're not.
They make more money.
Senator Marco Rubio, just want to ask you one last question. I know you're busy. James Comey coming out yesterday and saying, vote for Democrats. Your thoughts on this?
Well, James is a private citizen. He has a right to say whatever he wants. And I don't agree with him on that, but I don't have any problem. He wants to say that, he can say it. It's his right to speak out as an American citizen, and that's the thing about our republic, is that we have the freedom. You can't say that in Russia. You can't say vote against Putin, or you wind up in a hotel room dead.
Right.
You can't say in China vote, because they don't even vote at all. So he has every right as a private citizen to speak out, and is it disappointing? Sure. Look, Comey was in front of us all the time in the Intelligence Committee. I often found him to be, a very professional guy. Obviously, we've learned some things after the fact that are troubling about what was happening inside the FBI. And let me just say that about the FBI, since I mentioned them. The FBI has got thousands of employees. 99.9%, I'm making up the number, but a very high percentage, are incredible people. They're out there right now chasing some bad guy and trying to arrest people that are trying to hurt you and me and our families every day. What's happened is a handful of highly placed individuals, through public disclosures, have done tremendous damage to the FBI's reputation. And one thing that I haven't seen a lot of attention paid to that was revealed, that there were members of the media inviting FBI agents to baseball games and out to dinner and theater tickets. Surprisingly, very little coverage on that. That sounds to me like a big problem.
Yeah, that's like
was that in exchange for illegal leaks? All that. But that doesn't undermine the credibility of the FBI. It undermines the credibility of a handful of people working there that have done tremendous damage to the agency, an important agency for our country.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's a scary situation if you look at the big picture. Senator Marco Rubio, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, as always, being here on the Rich Stevens Show. Look forward to you being on again. And you're getting off soon, so remember the promise you made me, right?
Which is?
Well, you're going to come in the studio when you come back home.
Know. We got to get there. Yeah, so we're going to be there. They've canceled August recess, so we'll be here quite a bit. and so we're doing that. But I think obviously the first week of August is a recess week. And by the way, can I just say one thing? Yeah. Might we take 3 or 4 days to take my kids somewhere in August from time to time? Of course, because they start school in the third week of August. But recesses are not vacations. It's the one time of the year that we get to kind of spend 3 weeks consecutive going around the state and meeting with people. And so otherwise, the only days we have are Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays. And there's, it's tough to go. Most Saturdays and Sundays, the places we want to go aren't open in terms of meeting with people and the like. So that's what allows me and my colleagues to get around the state and see people. This year, the August recess is only 1 week because we got to be here the other 3 weeks because we got a bunch of judges that have been held up by the Democrats that we got to get done. That's one more thing I want to point before I get off the air, okay? People don't like the president. You don't have to agree with everything he does. But if you're a conservative, the one thing you should be very happy about is, Donald Trump has used his presidency to put more constitutional conservatives on the bench than any Republican president since Reagan. And I think by the time he's done, we'll surpass that number. And those are people that are going to be on the bench long after he's no longer president, long after I'm gone, long after your show has gone national, syndicated, and you made a lot of money and have your own private jet. So, after all that, these judges will be there applying the Constitution. And the Supreme Court gets a lot of attention, but these circuit court judges, these lower federal judges at the trial level, that's a huge achievement and something he's done right. But really good people. Gorsuch is a great example of it.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, Senator, I appreciate your time very much. I'm going to look for you to follow me back, keep your promise, which I know you always do. And I appreciate you taking time out of this.
Yeah, my staff is listening, so they know. Either though I control my own Twitter, they got to teach me how to do that following thing.
That's what they told me.
I know how to type on it, but I don't know like all the other tricks about it. I got to,
Just click on follow back to Rich Stevens.
Yeah, I'm kidding. I know how to do that.
I know. Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to talking to you again soon.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. That's Senator Marco Rubio taking a lot of time to talk to us from D.C., and he's got to get back onto the floor in a few minutes. We're way behind.